It was a chilly afternoon in early spring, the kind where the wind carries the smell of rain and the streets are painted with puddles and reflections. Inside a small apartment at the edge of town, a young mother named Elena sat at the kitchen table, staring at a handful of coins spread across her palm. She counted them again, even though she already knew the total by heart. It was never enough. On the calendar above the sink, a date was circled in bright blue marker: Liam's birthday. Her son had been talking about it for weeks, dreaming about chocolate frosting, candles, and the kind of laughter that only children can produce. But Elena's smile faded as she looked toward the old fridge. Inside, there was barely enough food for dinner, let alone a cake. She had promised herself that this year would be different, that she'd find a way to give him something special. Yet here she was, pockets nearly empty, surrounded by bills and silence. Her hands trembled slightly as she pushed the coins together, whispering to herself, "Maybe I can bake something small." The sound of the front door creaking open snapped her out of her thoughts. Liam, her 6-year-old son, burst in with the energy of 100 suns, his school bag bouncing against his back, cheeks rosy from the cold. "Mom, you'll never guess what we did at school today." Elena smiled weakly, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "Tell me, sweetheart." He climbed onto the chair across from her, his legs swinging. "We talked about birthdays. Everyone said what they want most for their party." Her heart tightened. "And what did you say?" Liam's eyes lit up as he clasped his small hands together. "I said I want chocolate cake. With candles. And you sitting next to me, singing happy birthday." Elena froze for a second, smiling through the ache in her chest. "That sounds perfect," she said softly. Later that night, after putting Liam to bed, she sat near the window, watching raindrops trail down the glass. Her reflection looked tired, the kind of tired that seeps into your bones. But in her heart, one thought remained: he deserves something good, even if it means I go without. The next morning, Elena left for her job at a small diner downtown, the kind where the neon sign flickers and the smell of coffee fills every corner. She wiped tables, poured endless cups of coffee, and forced smiles at customers who never learned her name. But every coin, every tip, she saved it all in a small jar labeled Liam's cake. By the end of the week, the jar held only 5 crumpled dollars and a few coins. Still not enough, but she refused to give up. One afternoon, while cleaning the counter, she overheard 2 women talking near the booth. "Did you see that new bakery on Maple Street? Their cakes are incredible, but expensive," one said. Elena paused mid-wipe. Maple Street, that's only a few blocks away. After her shift ended, she pulled on her worn coat and walked in the cold evening air toward the bakery. Through the frosted window, she saw bright colors, cakes decorated like art, and children pointing excitedly at the glass display. She stepped inside hesitantly, her breath fogging in the warm air. The scent of vanilla and sugar filled the room. Behind the counter stood a cheerful woman wearing a white apron dusted with flour. "Welcome. What can I get you today?" Elena hesitated. My son's birthday is tomorrow. I wanted to ask, how much is that small chocolate cake in the corner?" The woman smiled. "That one's $35. Elena's heart sank. She looked down, trying to mask the disappointment in her voice. "Oh, thank you." She turned to leave, clutching the few dollars in her coat pocket. The baker called after her, noticing the way she hesitated by the door. "Is everything okay?" Elena smiled faintly, shaking her head. "I just wanted to see it. It's beautiful." As she stepped back into the cold, she didn't see the little boy sitting near the counter, a boy with messy brown hair and curious eyes. He had been watching the whole thing. The little boy sitting near the counter couldn't stop thinking about the woman who had just left. He was about 8 or 9, small for his age, wearing a cozy green hoodie and sneakers that squeaked every time he moved. His name was Ethan. He'd come to the bakery with his grandmother to pick up cupcakes for his class, but now his bright mood had dimmed. He had seen how the woman's hands trembled slightly when she asked about the price, and how she smiled to hide the disappointment. Something about her, the tired kindness in her eyes, stuck in his chest like a feeling he didn't have words for. When his grandmother returned from the counter, holding a box of cupcakes. Ethan tugged at her sleeve. "Grandma." That lady looked sad. His grandmother smiled gently, distracted. Which lady? The one who asked about the chocolate cake. She didn't buy anything. Grandma chuckled softly. Maybe she'll come back later. But Ethan shook his head. No, I don't think she can afford it. She gave him a soft look, one of those looks adults give when they think you'll forget in 5 minutes. But Ethan didn't forget. He kept glancing toward the door, imagining the woman walking back through it, smiling because someone had helped her. That night, at home, Ethan couldn't sleep. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about that little boy she mentioned, her son. He imagined the kid's birthday tomorrow. No cake, no candles, just an empty table. The thought made his chest tighten. He got up quietly and tiptoed into the kitchen where his grandmother was watching TV. "Grandma," he said softly, "do we still have that jar with my allowance?" She looked up, a little surprised. "Yes, why?" He bit his lip. "I want to buy that lady's son a birthday cake." His grandmother blinked. "You mean the woman from the bakery?" He nodded quickly. She looked really sad. "And I think her son's birthday is tomorrow. I heard her say it." For a long moment, his grandmother just stared at him. Then her expression softened, and she smiled, that quiet kind of smile that says, "I'm proud of you, but my heart aches at the same time." "You're such a good boy, Ethan," she whispered, standing up to hug him. "But we don't know where she lives." Ethan frowned, thinking hard. "She works at the diner near the school. I saw the name tag on her coat." His grandmother sighed, but eventually nodded. "All right, let's see what we can do tomorrow morning." The next day was gray and rainy, the kind of weather that makes even birthdays feel smaller. Elena woke up early, quietly preparing breakfast before Liam woke up. She fried one egg, split it in half, and toasted the last 2 slices of bread. She placed the food on a plate shaped like a smiley face and whispered, "Happy birthday, sweetheart." Liam grinned, rubbing his sleepy eyes. "Mom, are we going to have cake later?" She froze for half a second before answering softly, "Maybe after work." "Okay." He nodded happily, trusting her without question, the way only children do. After breakfast, she bundled him up and walked him to the small school at the end of their street. On her way back, she noticed her reflection in a shop window, her worn coat, her tired face, but also the strength that kept her moving. At the diner, the shift was slow. She cleaned tables, smiled at strangers, and pretended everything was fine. But inside, the same thought played over and over. How do I tell him there's no cake? Meanwhile, across town, Ethan and his grandmother walked through the rain holding an umbrella and a small white bakery box. Inside was a chocolate cake with 6 candles. On the box, written in neat handwriting, were the words, "For Liam, happy birthday." Ethan clutched the box tightly as they stepped into the diner, raindrops dripping from his sleeves. The bell above the door jingled. Elena looked up from behind the counter, surprised to see a small boy she didn't recognize. He walked up to her slowly, his voice small but certain. "Hi, are you Liam's mom?" She blinked, confused. "Yes, I am. How do you know my son?" He smiled shyly and placed the cake on the counter. "You came to the bakery yesterday. I heard you talking about his birthday. I wanted him to have this." For a moment, Elena just stood there, frozen, breath caught, eyes wide. The world seemed to go silent except for the rain tapping against the window. She opened the box slowly, and when she saw the small chocolate cake inside, with its perfect frosting and colorful candles, her eyes filled with tears. "Sweetheart, you didn't have to," she began, but her voice broke. Ethan smiled wider. "It's okay. Everyone deserves a birthday cake." Her hand trembled as she covered her mouth, tears slipping down her cheeks. She knelt down to his level and whispered, "Thank you. You don't know what this means." His grandmother, standing nearby, smiled softly and said, "He's got a big heart." Elena nodded, her voice barely a whisper. "He really does." By the time Elena's shift ended, the rain had turned into a misty drizzle. The city lights reflected off the wet pavement like tiny stars scattered beneath her feet. She carried the white bakery box close to her chest, protecting it from the rain as if it was something sacred. She didn't have an umbrella, but she didn't care. For the first time in weeks, her heart felt light. Inside that box was more than a cake. It was kindness, unexpected and pure. When she reached their small apartment, Liam was waiting by the window, his little hands pressed against the glass. As soon as he saw her, he ran to the door. "Mom! Mom! You're home!" She knelt down, her wet hair sticking to her face, smiling through tears she didn't even try to hide. "Yes, baby. And guess what?" He blinked, curious. "What?" She lifted the lid of the box. Inside, the chocolate frosting gleamed under the soft kitchen light, with 6 tiny candles neatly lined up. Liam gasped, his eyes going wide. "A cake? You got a cake?" She nodded, voice trembling. "Someone very kind wanted you to have this." He didn't ask who. He didn't care. He just threw his arms around her neck and whispered, "You're the best mom ever." Elena closed her eyes tightly, holding him close. She wanted to tell him that she hadn't been the one who bought it. But somehow, she knew that wasn't what mattered. What mattered was that, for once, her son's laughter filled their little home. That evening, they lit the candles. The power flickered twice, as it often did, but the glow of the tiny flames made the moment magical. "Make a wish," she whispered. Liam closed his eyes and said softly, "I wish for Mommy to smile every day." Elena's hand covered her mouth as a sob slipped out, quiet but real. She blew out the candles with him, both of them laughing as the smoke curled into the air. After they cut the cake, she saved a slice on a small plate, wrapping it carefully. She didn't even know why. Maybe because she wanted to remember this feeling, this night. The next morning, Elena walked Liam to school with a smile that even exhaustion couldn't hide. As they approached the gate, she spotted Ethan, the same little boy from the diner, standing beside his grandmother. He saw them too and gave a shy little wave. Liam looked at him, puzzled. "Mom, who's that?" She knelt down, whispering softly, "That's the boy who made your birthday special." Liam tilted his head, then ran up to Ethan with a grin. "Hey, you gave me the cake, didn't you?" Ethan hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah." Without another word, Liam hugged him, quick and genuine. "Thank you. It was the best birthday ever." Ethan laughed, his ears turning red. "You're welcome." Their laughter filled the chilly morning air, simple and bright, the kind of sound that reminds the world that kindness doesn't have to be loud to change everything. That afternoon, when Elena returned to the diner, she found a small envelope sitting near the register with her name written on it in neat handwriting. Inside was a note that read, "You've made my grandson's heart shine brighter. Thank you for reminding him what compassion looks like. Mrs. Carter." Elena held the note against her chest. The world had been cruel to her in many ways. Long shifts, empty pockets, quiet nights filled with worry. But somehow, in the middle of all that struggle, a child's heart had reminded her that goodness still existed. That night, she told Liam the whole story, about the boy in the bakery, about his kindness. Liam listened silently, then whispered, "Can we bake something for him next time?" She smiled, her eyes glistening. "Yes, sweetheart, we can." And so they did. A few days later, they showed up at the same bakery with a small tray of homemade cookies, unevenly shaped, a little burnt around the edges, but filled with love. When Ethan opened the box, his eyes lit up. "You made these?" Liam grinned proudly. "Yep, with Mom, to say thank you." Ethan's grandmother smiled warmly, wiping at the corner of her eye. Elena stood behind them, quiet but glowing, watching the two boys talk like they'd known each other forever. It was such a simple thing, a cake, a thank you. But somehow, it had built a bridge between two families who might never have met otherwise. Sometimes, life doesn't give you what you want, but every once in a while, it gives you exactly what you need, disguised as a small act of kindness. And for Elena, that act had changed everything. A week passed since the birthday that neither Elena nor Liam would ever forget. Life returned to its quiet rhythm. Early mornings, long diner shifts, school drop-offs. Yet something inside Elena had changed. She no longer walked through her days feeling invisible. Kindness, she realized, had a strange power. It didn't just fill your hands. It filled your heart long after the moment was gone. But life, as always, had more to teach her. It was a cold Thursday afternoon when the diner door creaked open, letting in a rush of winter air. Elena looked up from wiping the counter and froze. Standing there was Ethan, his cheeks flushed red from the cold. But this time, he wasn't smiling. "Miss Elena," he asked softly, voice trembling, "can you come outside for a minute?" She frowned, concern rising in her chest. "Of course, sweetheart. What's wrong?" When she followed him out, she saw Mrs. Carter, the kind woman who had written her that beautiful note, sitting in the front seat of a car, clutching her chest. Elena rushed over. "Mrs. Carter, are you okay?" The older woman tried to smile but winced in pain. I think it's my heart," she whispered. Ethan's small hands were shaking. "I called Dad, but he's not answering. I didn't know what to do." Without a second thought, Elena turned to him. "Ethan, listen to me. You did the right thing, sweetheart. Stay close to me, okay?" She ran back into the diner and shouted, "Someone call an ambulance, please." Within minutes, flashing red lights painted the wet street. Paramedics hurried Mrs. Carter into the ambulance. Elena stayed with Ethan, holding his hand tightly as he cried quietly beside her. At the hospital, hours passed like days. Ethan sat curled up in a chair, staring at the sterile floor tiles, while Elena called her neighbor to watch Liam. Finally, a doctor came out and said gently, "She's stable now. We'll need to keep her under observation for a few days." Ethan's shoulders sagged with relief, and Elena exhaled, her own heart pounding. When the doctor left, she turned to the boy. "Hey," she said softly, "she's going to be okay." Ethan wiped his eyes, his voice small. "She's all I have. Mom, she's gone. And Dad's always working." Elena knelt beside him, her hand resting on his shoulder. "You're not alone, Ethan. Not anymore." The next morning, Elena came back to the hospital before her shift. She brought a thermos of hot cocoa for Ethan and a small vase with 2 wildflowers Liam had picked from the roadside. When Mrs. Carter woke, her tired eyes brightened. "You came back." Elena smiled. "Of course. You helped us when we needed it most. It's only fair I return the favor." Mrs. Carter reached out, her wrinkled hand finding Elena's. "You're a good woman, my dear. I can see why Ethan likes you so much." That single sentence made Elena's eyes sting with tears. Days turned into a week. Ethan spent most evenings with Elena and Liam while Mrs. Carter recovered. Their small apartment, once quiet and heavy, was now filled with laughter and warmth. The boys built pillow forts in the living room, fought over the last cookie, and fell asleep watching cartoons. Elena would peek in on them, smiling softly, 2 little boys from different worlds, but somehow perfect companions. One Friday evening, as she tucked them in, Ethan asked in a sleepy voice, "Miss Elena, do you think being nice really changes the world?" She paused, brushing his hair back gently. "Maybe not the whole world, sweetheart, but it changes someone's world, and that's enough." He nodded, his eyes closing. "That's what Grandma says too." Elena whispered, "She's a very wise lady." A few days later, Mrs. Carter was discharged from the hospital. When she stepped out into the cold winter air, Elena and the boys were waiting at the entrance, holding a small handmade sign that said "Welcome Home" in colorful marker letters. Mrs. Carter chuckled, pressing a hand to her heart. "Oh, my stars, you 3. Ethan ran into her arms, hugging her tightly. Elena smiled, her chest full of quiet pride. This was what kindness did. It didn't just heal, it multiplied. That weekend, Mrs. Carter insisted they all come over for dinner. Her home was beautiful, warm, filled with antique furniture and the smell of baked bread. But what struck Elena most wasn't the luxury. It was the peace. As they ate, Mrs. Carter looked at her carefully. "Elena, may I ask, what do you dream about?" Elena hesitated, caught off guard. "Dream?" "Yes," Mrs. Carter said gently. "What would you do if life wasn't so hard?" Elena smiled sadly. I'd open a little bakery. Nothing fancy. Just a place where people could come in, feel warm, and maybe forget their troubles for a bit. Mrs. Carter smiled knowingly. A place that serves kindness with every slice. They all laughed softly, but something deep in Elena's heart stirred. A dream she had buried under bills and worries now flickered again, fragile but alive. That night, as they walked home, Liam held her hand tightly. Mom, do you think dreams come true? She looked up at the glowing city skyline and said softly, sometimes, they do. You just have to meet the right people first. What she didn't know was that Mrs. Carter had been listening and had already decided to make that dream come true. A week had passed since Mrs. Carter returned home, and Elena thought life was settling back into its gentle rhythm again. The diner was still busy, her rent was still late, and the winter chill still crept through the cracks of her small apartment. But inside her heart, something had shifted, a quiet peace that no amount of hardship could shake. She now had friends. She had kindness circling back to her, and every time she walked past the empty bakery shop down on Maple Street, she couldn't help but picture her name on the window, painted in soft gold letters. Elena's Hearth Bakery. Just thinking about it made her smile. But dreams were still dreams. At least, that's what she believed. That Thursday afternoon, Elena was taking orders when the diner bell jingled, and in came Mrs. Carter, looking radiant. Gone was the hospital pallor. She was dressed in a warm beige coat, pearls at her neck, and a spark in her eyes. Mrs. Carter, Elena exclaimed, rushing over. You out and about. How are you feeling? Better than ever, my dear, Mrs. Carter said, her smile glowing. But I came to see you, not for pie. Elena blinked. Oh. The older woman took her hand. I was hoping you and Liam could join us for dinner tomorrow night. There's something I'd like to show you. Elena hesitated. Oh, you don't have to go through all that trouble. It's no trouble at all, darling, Mrs. Carter interrupted gently. Please, it would mean the world to us. And something in her tone, soft, earnest, made Elena nod. All right, we'll be there. The next evening, the sky hung heavy with snow clouds. Liam was practically bouncing with excitement as they walked up the same long driveway lined with twinkling lights. Do you think she'll have cookies again, Mom? He asked, clutching a tiny flower he'd picked from a sidewalk crack. I think she'll have more than cookies, Elena said with a smile, brushing snowflakes from his coat. When they reached the door, Ethan was already waiting, grinning ear to ear. Come in, come in. Grandma's been so excited. The moment they stepped inside, Elena froze. There, spread across the grand living room, were sketches, blueprints, of something she recognized immediately. A bakery. Her bakery. On the table were drawings of countertops, pastry shelves, little heart-shaped bread loaves, and on one of the designs, in flowing gold script, were the words Elena's Hearth. Her breath caught. What is this? Mrs. Carter appeared from behind the table, her smile soft but proud. It's your dream, dear. I just gave it a little push. Elena stared, speechless. I can't accept this. You've done too much already. The older woman reached for her hand, squeezing it firmly. You gave me something no one else could. Elena, kindness. You showed my grandson what compassion looks like. This isn't charity. It's gratitude. Tears welled in Elena's eyes. But how? I don't have money. I don't even. Mrs. Carter chuckled softly. Leave the numbers to me. The building's already rented. You'll run it, make it your own. All I ask is that you promise to keep spreading the kindness you've always given. Elena stood frozen, tears streaking her cheeks. Liam tugged at her coat, whispering, Mom, is this real? She nodded slowly, voice trembling. It's real, sweetheart. Mrs. Carter handed Liam a small box wrapped in a red ribbon. And every bakery needs a little helper. This is for you, my dear. He opened it carefully. Inside was a tiny chef's hat and apron embroidered with his name. His grin lit up the entire room. I'm gonna be your assistant, Mom. Everyone laughed through tears. That night, after dinner, they walked down to the bakery building together. The street was quiet, the snow falling softly under the lamplight. Mrs. Carter handed Elena a small set of keys. The metal glinted under the streetlight as if whispering new beginnings. With trembling hands, Elena unlocked the door and stepped inside. The space smelled faintly of old wood and dust, but she didn't see emptiness. She saw potential. She imagined the scent of cinnamon rolls filling the air, laughter echoing between the tables, children's drawings taped to the counter. She could already hear the soft bell ringing as someone entered, seeking warmth and a kind word. Her heart swelled. She turned back to Mrs. Carter, her voice breaking. "I don't know how to thank you." "You already have," Mrs. Carter said softly. "You thanked me the day you opened your heart to my grandson." Weeks passed in a blur of paint, flour, and laughter. Elena worked long days and nights, transforming the space into something magical. Ethan and Liam helped mix batter, decorate shelves, and paint the windows. The whole neighborhood watched curiously as a once-empty corner store began to bloom again. And when Elena's Half Bakery finally opened, people lined up outside, drawn not just by the smell of bread, but by the warmth inside. On opening day, Mrs. Carter walked in, arm in arm with Ethan. Elena ran around, her apron dusted with flour, cheeks glowing pink from the oven's heat. "Welcome to Elena's hearth," she said with a proud smile. Mrs. Carter handed her a bouquet of daisies. "The first of many happy days, my day." Elena smiled, her eyes shining. "None of this would have happened without you." The older woman shook her head. "No, Elena. It happened because of you. You were kind when the world was not. You showed us all what it means to give without expecting anything back." Liam tugged at Elena's apron and whispered, "Mom, we did it." Elena knelt beside him, pulling him into a hug. "Yes, baby, we really did." As the day went on, laughter and music filled the bakery. The bell over the door jingled endlessly. New faces, familiar smiles, warm greetings. But amid the joyful chaos, Elena paused for a moment, looking around. For the first time in years, she wasn't struggling to survive. She was living, and it had all started with a little boy who just wanted to buy her a cake. Late that night, when the shop finally quieted, Elena turned off the lights and stood by the window. Snow drifted outside, glimmering under the street lamp. In the glass reflection, she saw Liam asleep in a chair, Mrs. Carter smiling from a booth, Ethan dozing off beside him. Her heart overflowed. She whispered to herself, "Kindness always comes back." And outside, in the soft snow, the golden letters on the window seemed to glow even brighter. Elena's hearth. A home built not of brick and mortar, but of love. Winter slowly melted into spring. Snowbanks turned into puddles, and sunlight poured through the bakery windows every morning, warming the golden loaves lined neatly on the counter. The scent of cinnamon, butter, and hope drifted down the street, pulling in people who hadn't smiled in a long time. Elena's hearth had become something more than just a bakery. It was a heartbeat in the middle of town. Each customer who walked through those doors didn't just buy bread. They left lighter, because Elena remembered every face, every story. She asked about their kids, their parents, their dreams. She remembered who liked honey glaze, who preferred whole grain, and who just needed someone to ask how they were doing. And behind the counter, Liam, her little boy with the biggest smile, stood proudly in his apron, carefully sprinkling sugar over pastries, humming softly as the morning light danced in his hair. People loved him. They called him the little baker with the kind heart. One quiet afternoon, while wiping down the tables, Elena heard the bell chime. She looked up, and there, standing nervously by the door, was a young girl holding a baby. Her clothes were thin, her eyes tired, and her hands shook as she clutched a crumpled dollar bill. "Hi," she whispered softly. Can I get something warm? Anything for this?" Elena's heart ached instantly. The girl reminded her of herself, years ago, cold, desperate, and alone. She smiled gently. "Sweetheart, you sit down. The food's on the house." The girl's eyes widened. "No, I can't." But Elena was already in the kitchen, filling a tray with hot soup, fresh bread, and a small slice of cake. When she returned, she set the tray down and knelt beside the table. Eat first, she said softly. We'll talk after. As the girl ate, tears started falling silently down her cheeks. She whispered, I didn't know where else to go. I left home last week. My baby's sick, and I didn't think anyone would help. Elena reached over, placing a gentle hand on hers. You're safe now. You don't have to do this alone. Liam, peeking from behind the counter, watched quietly, his young face full of empathy. He grabbed a small stuffed bear from the bakery shelf, one of the decorations they used for the kids' corner, and walked over. He placed it in front of the baby and smiled. He can stay with you. He likes warm hugs. The girl let out a shaky laugh, holding the toy close to her child. Elena's throat tightened. That simple gesture, that innocent kindness, was the same spark that had changed their lives once. Later that evening, after closing time, Elena sat with a young mother in the back kitchen. They talked for hours. About life. About fear. About hope. The girl's name was Sophie. She had been working at a factory miles away, but when her manager found out she was pregnant, they stopped scheduling her. She had tried to stay strong, but the nights had gotten colder, the paychecks had stopped, and the baby had come sooner than expected. Elena listened quietly, her hands folded, her eyes warm. When Sophie finished, Elena stood and opened the small tin box where she kept her extra tips. She handed it over. Take this. It's not much, but it'll help you get a safe place for a few nights. Sophie's eyes filled with tears. I can't take your money. You don't even know me. Elena smiled gently. Once, I didn't know a little boy who bought me a birthday cake. But that boy saved my life. Sophie froze, her lips trembling. He sounds like an angel. Elena nodded, glancing at Liam, who was now dozing off in a chair, flowers still on his cheeks. He is, she whispered. A few days later, Sophie came back, this time, standing taller. She had found a part-time job nearby, and Elena offered her shifts at the bakery whenever she needed. The circle of kindness had quietly begun again, exactly the way fate intended it. Customers noticed the new girl behind the counter and the sparkle in Elena's eyes when she introduced her. This is Sophie, she'd say proudly. She's part of the Half family now. And just like that, another life began to heal, through kindness, warmth, and a slice of bread. Months later, Elena's Hearth hosted its first charity event. Every loaf sold that day went to support struggling mothers in the community. The bakery was full, the smell of vanilla and sugar in the air, laughter echoing against the walls, and music softly playing from the old radio. Mrs. Carter sat by the window, watching proudly as Elena bustled around with flour on her apron, Liam carrying trays of pastries, and Sophie helping customers. She leaned toward Ethan and whispered, I told you she'd build something beautiful. Ethan smiled. She built something better, a family. As the day wound down, Elena stood outside the bakery, the golden sunset painting the sky in soft pink and orange hues. She looked through the window, saw Liam twirling Sophie's baby around, Mrs. Carter sipping tea, and Ethan counting donations. Her heart felt full, not of riches, but of meaning. She finally understood that kindness didn't just change one life. It created ripples, spreading warmth far beyond what eyes could see. A voice broke her thoughts. Mom! She turned. Liam stood beside her, holding something behind his back. What is it, sweetheart? She asked, kneeling down. He grinned, revealing a tiny cupcake with one pink candle. It's for you. It's not your birthday, but I thought we could celebrate anyway. You said kindness always comes back, right? Elena's eyes shimmered. Yes, baby. It always does. He lit the candle. The wind almost blew it out, but it flickered back to life, stubborn, bright, beautiful. Make a wish, Mom. Elena smiled softly, looking up at the glowing sign above her, Elena's Hearth. She closed her eyes, whispering, May this warmth never fade. When she opened them, the candles still burned strong. That night, after everyone went home, Elena locked up the bakery and stood by the door one last time. The street was quiet, stars shimmering above. She remembered the girl she used to be, standing outside a store window, watching cakes she couldn't afford. Now, she was the one baking them. Now, she was the one giving them away. And somewhere deep inside, she knew this was never about the cake. It was about faith, about love, about the simple truth that when you give without expecting, the universe finds a way to give it all back. Elena looked up at the stars, whispering a quiet thank you to life, to kindness, to that little boy who once made the impossible possible. As the final light inside the bakery went out, a faint glow from the sign reflected on the snow outside. And if you listened closely, beneath the hum of the wind, you could almost hear a soft child's laugh echoing through the night. The laugh of a boy who'd once just wanted to buy a cake, and instead helped bake a miracle.